Good afternoon. We're ready here on a Friday. I debated waiting until Monday to do this video due to my lip being swollen, which was way more swollen than it is at the moment, but I decided that the show must go on. Today, we're going to be talking about the salary cap, some the Kansas City Chiefs, and then some of the league signings. So, are you ready to get your fix? Well, on Tuesday, Ian Rappaport brought to our attention that the salary cap for the 2020 season could drop, and he said that it could drop as much as about $40 million or even more than that, like 50 million, something like that, depending on if fans and how many fans are going to be allowed at stadiums and if the concessions will be open and, and whatnot. So there's a lot of implications surrounding how much the cap will drop. Now, in 2019, the salary cap was $188.2 million for each team. This upcoming season, it was supposed to be about $198.2 million per team. So about 10 million more increase, which is a big chunk of money, especially if you want to sign bigger contracts. However, this might not be the case, as the salary cap, like I said, could end up dropping, and it would be about $150 million for each team, which is a big chunk of money. Like I said, especially if you have those bigger contracts, it's going to be harder to pay those. Players might have to take pay cuts, something like that. So what does this mean for the players and the teams? Well, this is a perfect time now for the teams to get all the people they want signed before this cap hits so that they already have their guys and are ready for this upcoming season. On the other hand, though, players are left in a sticky situation. If you're a free agent when the salary cap hits, well, you just might have missed out on a bigger contract that you would have gotten had the cap increase instead of decrease. So let's take Jadeveon Clowney, for example, who wants about 17 to $18 million. Well, if he doesn't get signed by a team when this cap hits, then he's probably only going to be able to get 10 to $11 million for 2 to 4 years possibly. That's a big chunk of money he's going to lose, being that he didn't sign before this cap decrease. So if I were a free agent, I think it would be smart to bring down my asking price so that it's more reasonable. So let's go to Jadeveon Clowney and say, I want 17 to 18 million like he does. But no team has contacted me and I'm at a stalemate right now. Well, I could bring down my asking price to maybe 13, 14 million instead of losing $7 to $8 million. I'd probably only lose 3 to 4 million because players will more than likely have to take some type of pay cut this season. Also, that's why that 7 and 8 million will probably be lost as well. So this is something that players are highly against. The NFL Players Association, all those guys that are in the league and in the Players Association, they're really against it. They don't want to take a pay cut. They've earned this money. They're guaranteed money. So what does that mean? Do they just lose some of their salary pay, or do they get their guaranteed money? Do they get all their guaranteed money and no salary pay for the year? So who knows? I'm not really 100% sure how all of it's going to work out or how it works really. And but you can kind of catch what I'm saying. It's also reported that not just only this season the salary could end up dropping, but it could also drop next season as well, which leads me to my next topic, the Kansas City Chiefs. So with the salary cap dropping, possibly, the Chiefs are kind of ahead of the game a little bit. I say that because they've made two big signings this offseason to ensure that they got the faces of the team. They signed Patrick Mahomes to that 10-year, $503 million contract. So they locked up their offensive guy and made sure they kept their leader. Then on Tuesday as well, they signed their defensive tackle, who's arguably one of their best defensive players, Chris Jones, to a 4-year deal worth $85 million with $60 million in total guarantees upon signing. So they got their offensive weapon and defensive weapon locked up now, which means it will give them flexibility if the cap ends up dropping. So they would be able to cut guys with bigger contracts that they feel is too much and not worth paying. And then they can look at Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones, who signed these massive contracts, to maybe, if the players have to take a pay cut, take a little bigger pay cut, so that in the upcoming seasons they'll be able to keep their other weapons around for maybe 1 to 2 more years and try to make that Super Bowl run again. I think the Chiefs did an excellent job getting their 2 leaders signed, and now they won't have to worry about those guys for another 4 more years. So Chiefs will once again be freakishly good. Okay, so enough on the Kansas City Chiefs and their offseason. Let's go over some of the league signings that happened before the deadline on Wednesday. So the deadline to sign long-term deals and extensions was Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time, which is 3 p.m. here Central time. And there were a couple signings that caught my eye and some signings that didn't happen. So to start, I want to highlight the Tennessee Titans, who finally, yes, finally signed Derrick Henry to an extension. This was long overdue, as I believe he should have been paid before Ryan Tannehill got $118 million, 62 of that guaranteed 4 years. At least they got the signing done and got the player who actually led them to the playoffs and is actually the face of the team, Derrick Henry. On Wednesday, he signed an extension for 4 years, $50 million, with 25 and a half of that guaranteed. This contract makes him the fifth highest paid running back in the NFL, behind Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, Le'Veon Bell, and David Johnson. This is a perfect signing for the Titans, okay? Because in my eyes, like I said, Derrick Henry, he's the face of this team. He led them to the playoffs, and he's proved his worth. I mean, in his first 2 seasons, he didn't even start, okay? And in his third year, he split snaps. So in his third year, he had 1,059 rushing yards, okay, 12 touchdowns. That's a pretty solid season, splitting stats with, I think it was Deion Lewis, I believe, who was the other running back. But let's go look at his last season, where he was the main reason Titans made the playoffs. He rushed for 1,540 yards, 16 touchdowns. He had 206 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. I believe he might have even thrown a touchdown pass. I can't really remember off the top of my head, but I mean, these are very, very good stats. And he put the fear in defenders' eyes who were actually trying to tackle. I say trying because it's really hard to. If you tackle him, kudos. Usually it needs 2 people. Sometimes you can catch them off guard with 1, but usually it takes 2. This man made the Tennessee Titans get to that AFC Championship game against the Chiefs. Yeah, they lost, okay? But still, that's a very good statistic to have on your resume. And I think he's going to continue to ball out and rush for 1,000+ yards once again. Anyways, let's go to the Cleveland Browns, who signed one of the arguably best defensive ends in the NFL today, Myles Garrett. Okay, the Browns extended Myles Garrett contract to a 5-year deal worth $125 million, with 100 of that guaranteed, $100 million guaranteed. This is a massive contract for a defensive player. But I mean, this man's unbelievably good at what he does. He was 7th in quarterback pressure. He had a buttload of sacks. But yeah, I get that he was suspended last season, okay, for hitting Mason Rudolph over the head with his helmet. And a lot of people are thinking, why pay this guy? He's a thug. No, he's not. Okay, he's not. This guy balls out. And do you realize what he actually does on the football field? I mean, he's had 3 seasons, okay, where in his first season he had 31 tackles, 7 sacks. Not a bad rookie year by any means. And then you go to his second year, where he had 44 tackles, 13.5 sacks. 13.5 sacks. That's a really good year. I mean, he made a decent jump in year 2 and proved he can hang around the best in the NFL. However, though, in Myles Garrett's third season, which was last year, he had 29 tackles, 10 sacks. Okay, he did that with missing 6 games, but that means if he plays a full 16 games, he was on average for about 46 to 47 tackles with 16 sacks. So, I mean, he's making jumps continuously, and I don't think he's going to slow down. I mean, I had a buddy tell me that he's going to have the single-season sack record one day, and I can definitely see that, okay? It's very possible with how great he is to have more than 22.5 sacks, but it's going to be very, very tough to get there. And I think Chandler Jones of the Arizona Cardinals could potentially be that first person to break that record, because he averages almost a sack a game. But Myles Garrett has that potential as well. So enough on those guys. Let's go over to Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. So this whole offseason, Dak and his agent have been trying to get him an extension. They kind of stopped conversations back in March, I believe it was, or something like that, and it kind of was a stalemate. And at first, like I said, being at a stalemate, being that Dak was asking for way too much money. He was asking for way too much. So the Cowboys said, you know what? You're asking too much. We're going to give you the exclusive franchise tag. Exclusive. They had to put the exclusive right there because they're special or something like that. But they said that you can hold off on signing, kind of. You don't have to sign this yet until you try, if you want to try to get an extension by the time the deadline hits, which was Wednesday. However, though, they didn't reach that deal. Okay, they never reached that deal with the extension with the Cowboys. But they did offer Dak Prescott, which would have reportedly paid him about $33 to about $35 million a year, with $110 million of that guaranteed. The contract would have also had about 50 million guaranteed at signing, with 70 million guaranteed the first 2 seasons. I mean, Dak and his agent decided to decline this offer, which I think is just absolutely ridiculous, especially like I just noted with the cap dropping. You could have just guaranteed $110 million and you wouldn't have had to play a single game and you'd still get all that money. And that 50 million guaranteed. That's $160 million guaranteed to your pocket, to your name. No state income tax in Texas, so you get all of that instead of about 140 million. You get 150 or 160 or something like that. So I think this is just absolutely ridiculous. He was a 4th-round draft pick who has failed to lead the Cowboys to the NFC Championship game and really hasn't really had a jaw-dropping performance, really. Yeah, he's had good performances, but have you really been like, okay, that man can ball. Like, week in, week out, he's dangerous. I haven't seen that. I mean, I don't think he might have received an MVP vote, but I just don't see it. He's never had a jaw-dropping performance. So I mean, he's nowhere near, okay, what more than the contract that the Cowboys offered him. Okay, he's nowhere near more than that. I think that 110 million guaranteed is still way too much. I think he's about Kirk Cousins 80 million range, but I don't think he's anywhere near anything after the 110 million. But the Cowboys thought the same too, and they decided to stick with the franchise tag because they didn't come down with a deal by the time the deadline hit. So this franchise tag is going to pay him about $31.4 million in the 2020 season, and then it would ensure that if he got franchise tagged after this year again, he'd get about 37 or something like that, because it goes up a certain percentage after so many years. So like, say you 31.4 million. Now I think it's like a 3% more boost or something weird. So then it goes up to 37 million or something, and then, or like 120%, sorry, and then it goes to like 150 or something like that your 3rd year. But I mean, he could have made a little more money signing that extension, okay? But he was too stubborn too, and now I'm to believe that this might very well be Dak Prescott's last season in the Dallas Cowboys uniform. So that's going to do it for the day as we got through it with the swollen lip. It's like I said, it's gone down. It sucks. It doesn't hurt anymore, but, we kept the show going. We talked about the Kansas City Chiefs. We talked about the salary cap, some of the league signings, and how I think Dak Prescott probably won't be in a Dallas Cowboy uniform after this year. So thanks for stopping by, and you just got your fix with the Wicks.